Welcome to the Joy of Being You podcast. Shahana, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to start with your background. Could you tell us a little bit about your challenges and what shaped you to be the person who you are today?
So I think I always start with the definition of who I am on paper. Sometimes I use what's called the dinner party test, that if you were at a dinner party, how would I introduce myself? And, oftentimes we drop our profession into the mix, so, me being a physician is, I think, mistakenly how I identify myself. And I think oftentimes that is a mistake. I identify myself as a mom. I have 3 young boys as well. And I identify myself as a speaker. But I was even 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was never those things. I was in the works to becoming a medical doctor. However, what really changed was when I became honest with those around me and even those who didn't ask to hear, but I chose to tell them what my real story was. Because I think sometimes, especially being in the healthcare profession, especially being a physician, you're somehow put on this pedestal that you know all and you do everything right. And that's actually far, far, far from the truth. I think what's more appropriate is that a lot of the times professionals are quite secretive about what is going on. And that's kind of intentional to kind of keep this barrier, this facade about, I have it all together. It allows us to be empathetic. It allows us to put the patient first. But what it doesn't allow us is the veil of authenticity. And I didn't feel like I was being authentic at all within myself, because the true story was I was starting to reveal that when I gave my TEDx talk in 2019. That was the first time I stepped on a stage. And that was the first time I ever put the diagnoses of anxiety and depression next to my name.
Oh, wow.
Up until that point, it was me treating those diagnoses. It was never me being associated with them. And the big thing I left out was OCD. And that was the next layer. I was actually on a podcast that the interviewer asked, she's like, "Is that it for your story?" And I thought, this is the moment. This is the moment where I can actually say the truth. And the truth was that I had symptoms of a type of OCD called pure obsessional OCD, just the obsessive thoughts, not the compulsions, since the age of 5, 6, 7, a very young age. And the podcasting world made it safe to talk about because it was speaking to a stranger. I didn't think about anybody else who would be listening. And that podcast turned into 80 podcasts of then being comfortable sharing and using the language that was appropriate.
Yeah, so you talked about OCD, about anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I also heard you talking about wearing a mask and having to carry all of this within you, not showing it to anybody outside. Can you tell us a little bit more about these challenges and how they affected your life?
I think the biggest or the easiest cure, I thought growing up, was just perfection. I thought if I walk the tightrope of perfection, then everything would be okay. And that was perfection in my grades. That was perfection in my career. That was perfection every step of the way. And that served me really well to a point. And then suddenly it didn't. And that point that it no longer served me well was when I had my first child, because of course, motherhood and perfection don't go hand in hand. Those two things can never happen probably in the same sentence. And my infallibility and my inability to study my way out of motherhood and go, I can just ace this exam that is a baby, didn't quite work out so well for me. And layer by layer, level by level, I started to disintegrate my entire identity that I had built upon this notion of just getting everything right. And it was just like this beautiful Jenga block tower that just began to crumble down. And then I reconciled with, well, what am I doing? Who am I? Who am I even as a mom? But more importantly, I had to come face to face with the diagnoses that I had kind of really tried to run away from as a child, as an adolescent, the anxiety, the pure OCD, the depression, all of those labels that I had tried so hard not to be associated with.
Mm.
And not to say that I needed those labels or that I wanted those labels by any means, but one of the things that I did really, really well was suppress them. And in
Mm.
hindsight, the only thing that suppression guarantees is the resurrection of those things. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So when did you find out about, I guess, that you had OCD or that you had anxiety and depression?
Yeah.
Was that a point in your life? You said that you have had that since you were very young. You were saying 4 or 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So those
Um,
started very early. Yeah.
yeah. So when did it become, I guess, a diagnosis?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think about from symptom onset to diagnosis, about 30 years,
Wow.
like a long, long, long time. And that was plenty of time to allow shame to fester,
Mm,
to allow the feeling of why can't I just snap out of it to fester?
mhm,
Like,
mhm.
I think I come from a family, I think many families do. Mental health is a snap out disease, just like snap out of it and you'll be fine. Like, I wish I was waiting to snap my fingers and snap out of it. Nothing happened. But
Yeah,
mental health is really good when you don't address it, it will morph and it will change. So the OCD became an eating disorder. Once,
mm,
that started to take its physical toll, that became compulsion with exercise. That became the compulsion with perfection. And that's what we don't talk about enough with mental health is that this ability to be the same thing, but like a chameleon, constantly
what's
be
up?
changing unless you look in the mirror face to face, usually with healthcare professionals around you to go, okay, what are we dealing with? But if you just treat it like a game of whack a mole, it
Yeah.
will keep popping up.
Oh yeah, I have had crazy anxiety, panic attacks, eventually depression as well. So yeah, and it's really interesting how it shows up in every area of your life. So it's not an isolated
No,
thing.
no.
It really affects every single part of your life. So you said that it took you about 30 years
Mhm.
living with it before you came to the point that it became a diagnosis. And was that around the time you became a mother?
Yep. The two things happened at the exact same time. So
Wow.
I had never, ever sought professional help for this. Like, it was almost like, why would I? I was the one treating people. I didn't need to
Yeah.
do anything.
You were
I
the strong one. Yeah.
I was exactly, exactly. And I thought I could just study my way out of it. In fact,
Mm,
I just learned about the fact that there was such a thing called pure obsessional OCD because OCD in our society and our culture is kind of made fun of, right? We poke jest at OCD, kind of like those are the people who are checking, those are the people who are washing their hands 21 times a day. That's kind of the fodder of a sitcom, right?
mhm.
But nobody understands that that is just what you, not for everybody, but that is sometimes what you see. What you don't see are these horrible, cyclical, intrusive thoughts that you don't want to have that are absolutely debilitating for you too. So for me, it took a very, very long time. I learned about the diagnosis in medical school as a medical student. Once again, learned about it and did nothing with regards to myself. But when finally I became a mom, that's the beauty, I think, of motherhood is that in order to heal your child, you have to heal yourself. Like you have to,
Yeah.
like if you want what's best for your child, you can't keep looking this way. It's eventually you have to turn and look in the mirror and go, I better do something about this. And it was seeing a reproductive psychiatrist who was like, oh yeah, this is bread and butter, seen this before. And sometimes that's when you see a clinician that treats your case as completely normal, that's a
Mhm,
wonderful feeling. Because
mhm.
there's one thing in medicine, most people don't want to be unique. Most people don't want to be oh, I've never seen that before. You want someone who goes, I get it. I've seen this. I know how to help you. You are not the only one. That's what you want in mental
Yeah.
health, is to not feel like you are this N of one mysterious kind of case. It's not supposed to be like that. I always
Yeah.
talk about it like a rash. No one wants the rash that no doctor has seen. Like that would be odd, right? So you want to be the normal rash. Like, oh, I get it. I
Yeah.
see it. And seeing that with the psychiatrist was like, oh, I could feel like I didn't have to fix myself. I could have
Mm.
other people around me give me a bit of a plan, right? And that's half the battle.
So, when you said that when you went to medical school, you learned about this, did you recognize it in yourself at all?
Mm. Um, you know what? Not the depression and anxiety, but the OCD, the intrusive thought component that I've had since I was so little. I went home from that lecture and called my boyfriend, my now husband, and I said, there's a name for this. Like I had told him
Wow.
about it, but I had always thought like, don't judge me. I don't know what's happening, but I'm just going to lay it on the line. And he was like, obviously nothing but supportive. He didn't know what I was talking about either. But after that lecture, I called him. I think the words out of my mouth were, I'm not crazy. This is a diagnosis. This
Oh,
is
wow.
something. And it was the most anchoring, refreshing, beautiful experience because I didn't feel so alone. Right. So I wasn't the only one. I could Google it and there was a name for it. Uh,
Wow.
and
And
that gave me
so,
a sense of
so
hope.
you, yeah, so you were hiding this, then you study about it, you recognize it,
Yeah.
but you just recognized it, but you still didn't take the next step. You
Nothing.
said like, okay, whatever, like I got this and
100%.
I'm just gonna live with it.
Absolutely. And it was like, okay, that's what I have. A too good. Like these are all the subtexts we don't want to say about mental health. Too good for it, too strong for it, too smart for it. That's
Mm,
what we don't want. That's no one wants to say that. But I think as a physician, I can say that because I'm talking about nobody else. I'm talking about myself.
mm-hmm.
Too good for it, too smart for it, too strong for it. And that's the biggest fallacy with regards to mental health. You are strong, you are smart, you are good. It's hard. It's really hard. It doesn't say anything about you, right?
Yeah.
About your strength, about your will, about any of that too. But yeah, I did exactly that. I learned about it and then I suppressed it. So
Very interesting.
yeah,
Until you became a mom and you said, okay, this is my time to face this because I am responsible for another human being and I want the best for my child, which is what you said.
exactly. So
Well,
true.
what was the most difficult part about this experience? And what was the most difficult part about facing it after all these years?
Yeah. Yeah. There's still shame. I wish there wasn't, but there is. I was even talking to my own counselor about this, going, I can write a book about this. I can be on 80 different podcasts about this. And I probably present like I have figured this out. But that's the thing with mental health as well. There are times when you feel like you got this, and there
Mm-hmm.
are times when you feel as frail as a little glass jar. My son actually just dropped a glass bowl on his foot and it actually lacerated his big toe. But that's the fragility of how you feel sometimes, as thin as glass. And why one day is like that and why the next day is like that, I don't have a good answer for that, right? There's so many things that play into the mix, but the word is humbling. It is such
Mm-hmm.
a humbling journey to go through. And it eroded everything that I had thought I had to be, which was perfection, which was achieving everything, almost like a smokescreen that if I achieve all this stuff, you won't discover the real secret that I have. But I
Mm-hmm.
also discovered that by telling people that I have this and had this for a very long time, the world doesn't implode. The world doesn't change. For me, it felt like something was going to fall out from the ceiling, but people just go on. And I think that's a great lesson too, that the things that we're so scared to share with other people, those are the things that we need to share, because what that means more to you than it will ever mean to them. You know what I mean? Like you need to get that off your chest. And if you have the right person, they will do the one thing that you need, which is lean in. They might not
Mm-hmm.
understand, but they will accept you and love you for trying to be who you are. And that's who I think is the best measure of love and friendship and relationship, right? So,
Yeah, oh, 100%. It's being vulnerable, being able to be who we are,
mhm, mhm.
and just being accepted for that. 100%. I agree. So when you became a mom, you said you started therapy. Is that correct? Did I get that right? Yeah.
No, for sure. And it was the missing piece of that puzzle is that very commonly, even if you don't have a pre existing history of pure OCD or OCD, a lot of women, and actually more common than we think, up to 10% in the first 6 months, and it goes down after that, experience intrusive thoughts with regards to their child. And the most common intrusive thought is, could I hurt or harm my child? Now, you can imagine as a new mom or a mom in general, these are absolutely terrifying thoughts. And do you think you're ever going to pick up your phone and tell your physician or your healthcare practitioner that, hey, I'm experiencing this? No, you're not, because you're
Mhm.
ashamed. So, what do is you hide it and you suppress it and you pretend that it's not there. And that masking lends to panic attacks and causes anxiety. And
Oh.
anxiety eventually burns out. You can only go like this for so long until you feel like you just don't, there's no get up and go. And that's the depression setting in. So it was because of those types of thoughts that I knew I had to get help. I knew I had to get attention, but once again, I had 30 years of practice suppressing it. So even though I had a newborn, I went back to work at 3.5, 4 months because I figured, can't do this mom thing. Mom thing's hard. I'm going to go back and be a physician. I'm good at that. So I would go be a physician, but then come home and absolutely be, a puddle or disintegrated into the reality of what I was facing. And that went on for almost 8, 9 months
Oh,
until
wow.
I finally went. And the truth is, this podcast is all about being truthful. The truth was that it came to a point of where I wanted to not be here anymore. Like
Oh,
that was
wow.
the point of going, you know what, and it wasn't, even though I deal with suicidality all the time as a physician, in myself, it was a very comforting thought. And
Mhm.
because it was so comforting, it was such a relief to think about it. Then I knew I was in trouble. Then I knew that
Mm.
that was what it didn't scare
Wow.
me. It didn't cause me any alarm. It actually brought me comfort. And because of that, I thought to myself, yeah, this has gotten on too far. So I didn't reach out to my own physician because of ego. I reached out to an anonymous physician helpline, and that is what started the cascade of the psychiatry, the counseling, the medication, the on and on. Mental health healing is not linear, and don't let anybody fool you into thinking that it's just, maybe it is going to be for people. I don't know. But for a lot of people, I compare it to like an ECG, up, down,
Mhm.
up, down, up, down, right? Like
Oh,
some
yeah.
good, some moments it's down. Some moments I've got the right counselor. Other times I might need to try two, three, or four before I find the right fit. And the same is true for medication. So it can be a very frustrating process.
Mhm.
Um, we always talk about get help, try to get help, but nobody talks about after you actually reach out for help. It doesn't mean that it's a one and done. The get help is just the first part of it. The second, third, fourth part is the up, down, teeter totter of what is your prescription in counseling and medication unique for you? What is that going to look like? And
Yeah.
nobody has a crystal ball, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that's just the beginning of the journey because then there is learning about ourselves. There is a lot of up and down in that too, just being completely honest and vulnerable with ourselves and also in front of another human being who
Yeah.
might be there to help us, but still it's vulnerability. We are exposing ourselves, right?
And so
So
much of this journey is not learning, it's unlearning. It's unlearning how we were modeled emotional health, mental health,
mhm,
vulnerability in our household, right? If you were in a
yeah.
household where you didn't talk about that stuff, if you were in a household where people would make comments, oh, that person's on an antidepressant, like, oh, Like, you didn't have to, your parents or whoever raised you didn't have to say anything. You knew automatically that that was maybe a sign of weakness, or I'm
Oh,
not going to
totally.
go there, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you saw your parents drinking and that was the way to cope, whatever the case might be. It's all of this nonverbal things that we all pick up as kids, right? So much of that going is, what do I believe? And that goes back to your own set of values. Like, it's not your parents' values, it's not your siblings' values. What do you want? My third born son, I've got like a 9, 7, and 5 year old. And the other day I said, you don't need to follow what your brothers do. What do you want? And he's like, I want to follow them. Like, that's all he knows. He just knows that you
For
follow or
now. For now.
like, I said, what do you want? He's like, I kind of looked at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. He's like,
Mhm.
I want to follow them. I said, okay, fair. but sometimes
That's
it's
sweet. At least he knows.
he knows that, right? But
Yeah.
hard. It's, especially as we get older, it's a hard question to ask ourselves, and you're not going to get it right the first time, right? And
Oh
that's
my gosh, of course not.
yeah,
Absolutely not.
yeah,
You talked about the up and downs of this healing path. What was the most difficult part of this process? If you can just say one thing that you
yeah.
said that was that facing that or getting through that or knowing that or learning that was the most difficult part of this.
Starting medication,
Starting medication. Why?
100%, 100%. The stigma. I've prescribed thousands of prescriptions. I don't bat an eye, right? I think that I know about the pharmacology inside and out, but when it comes to you, when it comes to putting a foreign substance into your body, I still had the feeling that I should be able to do this without a drug. I should be able to do this without assistance. I should be able to figure this out. So
Because you're
all
strong enough, you're smart enough, and what was the third one?
you're good enough, right?
You're
Yeah,
good enough.
all of that, right? So,
Yeah.
that was a hard one for me. And what was funny is that it was my good friend. So let's say the regular dose of medication that you just start with is 25, and you want to work your way up to 100 milligrams, 200 milligrams. Let's just say I started off with 6.25. Like, you can't even buy that. You have to get it like specially compounded. So a friend was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You either take the darn medication, don't take like a homeopathic like type of dose, like just take the medication. So because you're kind of not doing anything, you're just taking
Uh-huh.
less than a pediatric dose. So sometimes you have to have people who love and care about you to call you
Call you
out your
out.
biases, and I needed
Mm.
that too. And I've come a long way from there. And the first medication I tried caused me horrible side effects. It didn't work, but was that the end of the world? No. So it takes, it's sometimes not going to be the first one, but that was the hardest mentally for me to get over that.
Mm. And so what helped you through it? Because you were smart enough, you were good enough, and
Yeah,
you
all the things, right? So, oh, do you do you know what I realized too is that the people that had been selling me that dialogue, even though that they were the people that I loved so much, my own family, I couldn't wait for acceptance from them because I had my own family now, right? So I think it was very easy for me to use people in my family as a scapegoat. Like they feel this way about mental health. They're never going to accept me with this. They don't even want to use the words OCD, whatever the case might be. But I was using them as a scapegoat because I didn't accept myself. It had nothing to do with them. It, I was embarrassed. I had shame. They were great to point fingers at, but they loved me just the same too. I was so embarrassed, right? So when I had that realization that, oh my goodness, I'm using them as this kind of, once again, a smoke screen to go, it's all their fault. No, it really wasn't, right? So, and if anything, my sisters and my mom, my dad, like everybody's walked alongside of me, and the kind of seen how much I've had to grow and go through this too. But yeah, my husband especially has been a huge, huge, huge anchor. He might not always understand it all, and I have to remind him sometimes, but there is never any judgment.
Mhm.
There isn't any judgment. I think if you are listening as a supporter of someone going through something right now, the more that you can keep a curious mindset and the less that you can keep a judgmental mindset, because some of this stuff might not make sense to you, and that's okay. It's not supposed to make sense to you. You just have to be able to walk alongside that person.
Mhm. So do you think that getting the support of your husband and your family was what helped you through the hard times, these hard
Yeah.
moments?
Yeah, no, especially my sister and especially my husband. Those were the two when it was really, really dark moments. And I should say my mother-in-law too. Like, so there were some really key people there that just changed the way that I look at myself. Right. They had to
Mhm.
remind me who I was. And um, yeah, in some of those deepest, darkest times. And then and sometimes you can't have anybody reach you when things are so dark. But I have to say, I had an amazing counselor. I felt like she came at the right place at the right time. She really understood what perinatal and postpartum depression, anxiety, and OCD look like. So when she would speak, I would feel like, oh my gosh, she gets it. And realize
Mhm.
that when you're in the postpartum time period, you're speaking in this veil of sleep deprivation as well, right? So having someone that can really relate to you when you are going through physically a hard time as well as mentally a hard time
Mhm.
was a game changer as well too. So
Mm.
it's yeah, it's sometimes this army of people and sometimes you push them away because you're scared and other times you really need to pull them close, but um it can be a very very precarious scary time, but the moment that you realize that what's on the other side of that has to be better than what you're going through now, like it has to be better.
So when was that moment for you when you realized that what was on the other side as you were going through the ups and downs and the really dark parts of this journey, and you had some support, but as you said, sometimes it just became so dark, and I have been there, so I understand what that means. And you do push people away because I mean I remember those days that I didn't want to put the burden on other people, and there was nothing they could have done to make it better. I knew that I had to pull myself out of it, but I had no idea how, and maybe I just needed to be there a little bit too.
Mhm,
So what was that moment for you as you were going through these tough dark times,
mhm.
when you started seeing that there is another side?
Yeah. I don't think I could even picture it, to be honest, at that point, but remembering not being able to be left alone with my eldest because I was so scared that I could do something, right? Like because the thoughts would make you believe that, and you would kind of be in this whole cycle, crying at his feet when he was like, what, a couple of months old, because I was so upset with myself and kind of shameful for having these thoughts. Like, I was like, this is not what I had envisioned as a mom. Like this, being a mom was hard enough. And then you add this veil of shame on top of it with these thoughts that you didn't ask for, but that just kind of like, don't think of a purple elephant, just keep coming and
Mm.
coming and coming. Was it eroded the sense, it sold me a lie. And it was like, this is not what I had signed up for. And I knew that there was something better out there for me and for him. And I knew how important bonding with your child was at such a young age. So, but one of the crux, one a really difficult time came when I was very close to driving on the other side of the road and kind of going like that was it for me, like on the highway. So those, and I can remember those moments like almost like snapshots very 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 clearly too. So some of, I don't think it was one moment, I think it was a compilation of things that went, okay, okay, this is enough, right? Um, and even the enoughness, I thought just by picking up the phone and calling the anonymous physician helpline, I somehow thought that all of this would be solved. I never anticipated that I would actually
Mm.
have to work at it.
Mhm.
However
Yeah.
naive that sounds, I thought I thought all I had to do was ask for help, and then I could just be like, okay, I'm done. No, like there is the feeling of, okay, now you got to do the work part of it too. And that took time. But I just feel like I think once I could start to, like meeting with the reproductive psychiatrist, feeling like that we had a bit of a plan, feeling that I was in the hands of someone who knew what I had, all of that just it's like you're in this big pit and you're slowly making your way to a glimmer of light at the top. And sometimes you
Mhm.
fall down 10 steps, but those were some of the key moments that helped me climb out of that, I would say.
Yeah, and what was the inner transformation? You know, as you were going through this journey, what changed inside of you that helped you to get out of that dark place?
Hmm. I don't think the real inner transformation, I think that came, the seeds were planted at the TEDx talk that day when I made the conscious decision to speak openly about this. Because up until that point, it was being on medication, trying to stabilize on medication, seeing counseling regularly, obviously going back to work. I had two more kids in that time period. I think I kept having children because I kept thinking, this one will be easier. I'll get this one right. Nope, didn't get the second one right. Okay, I'll get the third one right. Nope, didn't get the third one right. Like, like it kind of like I'll have that motherhood experience that I always wanted. And pregnancies were horrible. The postpartum period was really difficult. But it wasn't until I could share my story openly and my full story with someone that I realized that that was what was missing from the healing journey,
Oh,
is me
wow.
actually accepting myself and being able to talk about it. Because up until I had like my first, second, and third child, I still was personifying like perfection. Like I've got my three kids, I'm working as a physician, everything's good, wrapped up in a little bow, posting pictures of how I'm doing, beautiful sensory activities with them and cooking all these healthy meals and everything is Instagram worthy. And that wasn't it. I realized I posted those pictures to get acceptance and someone kind of going, you got this, you're a good mom, you're a good mom. And the minute I could let go of that and say, I don't need anybody else to tell me that. But in order to do that, I had to come face to face with that 5-year-old girl myself,
Mm,
who was so ashamed and so scared, who still is so scared because she doesn't know what's happening to her.
wow. That's so powerful. That's so powerful what you said, because if I understood you right, you have already been doing therapy. You have already been doing the work. You have, you figured out your medication. You had somebody who helped you, but you still were kind of trying to hide behind that mask until that TED talk. And what made you do that TED talk?
I saw like an ad or like a poster that's advertised like to come give a TED talk in Abbotsford. And I thought that would be interesting. I was 3 months postpartum with my third child. I think I was delirious and like in a postpartum haze. Like I loved speaking. I knew that. And I still remember the moment. I'm like, he was napping and I thought on a whim, let me just apply and see what happens. And when I got it, I think I was shocked, but I was also really scared because I thought, how am I supposed to kind of come up with this in such a short time frame? But for some reason, the idea of I just couldn't get past the words hypocrite. Like every time I started writing, the words hypocrite just kept coming to me.
Wow.
And I started the TED talk by saying I was a hypocrite. And I meant that in every sense of the word because up until that point, mental health was a you disease. I would support you and advocate for you and write medication for you and counsel you and do everything for you. But when it came to me, I was too good for it,
Mm,
too smart for it,
mm,
right? Too strong for it. And that was the hypocrisy right there. I didn't say OCD, I wasn't that strong yet, but I said anxiety and depression. And it felt, I remember my mentor was in the audience, and as I left the TEDx stage, she kind of did this to me. And because she knew parts of the story as well, too. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning. And it felt so freeing to be able to be, that was the glimmer of authenticity of who I wanted to be. I just didn't know how.
wow. And then came the podcast when you talked about the
Yeah.
OCD. That was your second step when you just literally just said did you feel a sense of relief after the TED Talk? What did you feel?
Oh, huge sense of relief. Just like this, I talk about the idea, when things roll off your tongue, it was as if postpartum anxiety and depression were stuck to my tongue. Like nothing rolled off because I was so scared, but I was still hiding behind. There is something to be said about society being very accepting with postpartum anxiety and depression. They're like, oh, you had a baby. Okay. I'm like, no, no problem. We'll embrace you. But when you say postpartum, it signifies a beginning, middle, and end that you had it, you solved it, and now it's done. You're not like, I'm no longer postpartum. My kids are older. But the minute you take away that prefix and you kind of just say, I had or have anxiety, depression, OCD, that means it's ongoing. And that means that, oh, so you haven't snapped out of it yet? You haven't figured it out yet, right? So you can see how I work baby steps into actually telling the truth. And it was on that podcast, and it was lovely because without being in person, it was peak of COVID time filming this podcast. I was very new to the podcasting world, and she just pressed and she asked, and I thought, okay, what do I have to lose? And I
I
really
love
felt like
it.
it was just her and I, just like this, chatting. And I
Mhm.
said the words, and it was, yeah, like I could feel the glass shattering around me. And she just, and then I said, okay, and that meant thoughts of hurting or harming someone. Like, do you want to go there? Um, and we went there and nothing happened. And then I saw once again an ad to speak, like an Instagram kind of ad to speak at the Yale University's Women and Mental Health Conference, all virtually. This was still during COVID. And I submitted an application for perinatal OCD. And in the application, I said, someone needs to tell this story because this is way more common than we think. And if you're hosting a conference on women's mental health, should be part of that because it can
Mhm.
be very common. And I got accepted, and it was virtual, and I gave that presentation, and it was, the way I presented that was I used an anonymous case, and of course the case was me. And at the end I said, you know, truth be told, that was me who's standing before
Wow.
you today. So, in a professional context, that gave me a little bit of the educational background to research for that and then bring those personal and professional worlds together. Because my MO was to study out of everything, but now I could
Yeah.
actually study into something instead of out of it.
Wow. Wow. So after these, um, how did it shift your life? How did it shift your everyday life?
Yeah. I for those who live with OCD and intrusive thoughts, and even anxiety and depression for that matter, sometimes you can envision that entity as a bit of a beast, right? And the analogy I give is that sometimes it can be this small chihuahua barking at you in the corner, and at other times it can be this big Doberman or big German Shepherd who you feel like is going to come and attack you. Like you feel that visceral sensation. And let me just say, I spend more time these days with the Chihuahua than I do with the German Shepherd. It's not gone. That's the thing. It's not gone. This is something that I've had for 30 plus years. I don't anticipate it's just going to go away.
Mhm.
However, it is that little chihuahua that I can see right now and go, yeah, I got you. I see you there, right? I'm not as scared of it as I used to be. Do I have periods where I'm petrified of it? Of course I do. Do I have an amazing counselor that I'm now working and trying not to suppress and ignore and use the maladaptive coping mechanisms I used to? Yeah, I'm trying to do something that isn't like me. And what
Mhm.
isn't like me is to not suppress an issue that's personal. I love, we call it heroing, right? I love heroing all my patients and saving the day and being their great doctor. But when it comes to me, it's like, nope, you know, look everywhere else. But I'm trying to correct that about myself too. And that's hard, right? So, um, I think a lot of the times is a little bit more of that feeling of acceptance instead of avoidance.
Mhm. Wow. And you know what I love about your journey too, as you say that you're still on the journey.
Mhm.
Like this is something we're working on every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not, and therein almost lies, I don't know. I don't, when you keep fighting and fighting and fighting for something to disappear, that can be exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
When you go that this is the devil that I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are coping mechanisms, there are tools, and I'm not alone in this. That there is a whole cohort of people in this world that feel have lived a journey maybe adjacent to mine, not exactly, but similar to mine. There's a lot of hope in that, right? I think that's a recipe for hope. I don't know if you can feel hopeful when you feel alone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I really, that's a very interesting question. Can you find hope and complete um, when you're completely alone and feeling like isolated? I think that's why loneliness and isolation is so much more toxic than we actually give it credit for, right? So I think
Yeah.
those have been some of the key things.
Yeah, and I also, you know, what you were saying that when we put this mask on, you know, that when you put on up this persona that everything is fine,
Yeah.
and you avoid how you're feeling inside, I feel like you're abandoning yourself. So you're alone because you are not there for
Right.
yourself. You
That
know what I mean? So it's kind of like, and when you start being there for yourself, then you also, it's easier to allow the people to be there too. Because if you can sit with accepting what's happening, accepting yourself for who you are, this beautiful, perfectly imperfect human being,
yes.
right? um, then you're in surrender. So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's so that you're well said. That self abandonment, and that started at the age of 5 or 6. Because what choice do you have if you don't know what's going on in your own head or in your own body or whatever the case might be? You do the safest thing, and your brain only wants what's safe for you, which is going to go, I'm going to exit. I'm going to exit in all these different ways, right?
yeah,
So much of the healing has had to be imagining myself crying as that little girl, or imagining myself with all of those feelings of complete terror, and kind of going up to her and giving her what I would give to my child right now, which is
yeah,
comfort and hope and acknowledgement and all the things, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, I think a lot of us have those wounds which we have found ways to cover up. And you do what works well in the moment, but when it's, and suddenly at one point that will stop working for you, right? So,
yeah, yeah. It's different to survive and it's different to thrive.
yes.
And we create a survival persona. That persona will only help us to survive, but we can never thrive with that
No,
persona. In
no.
order for us to thrive, and I heard you to say a couple of things. I heard you saying taking off the mask, becoming authentic,
Mhm.
surrendering, accepting who you are, being vulnerable. I heard you saying these words
Yeah.
is who you actually became.
Yes.
So who you became is that you became more of who you are.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly. And more of who you are doesn't require that fight, right? There's a
Hmm.
huge fight that required me to walk that tightrope of perfectionism and not to let anybody see in, and all those things. And I think when you do enter into whatever that is for you, somehow it somehow doesn't feel as hard, right? Like, it is a journey still,
Yeah.
but you don't have to fight to keep everything perfect in my case,
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't take the same amount of effort and energy because you're just in your flow. You're just being,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
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 So in contrast of the past and the present,
Yeah.
the past where you were wearing a mask and the present moment where you still say that I'm still working on this,
Mhm.
how would you say that your life changed? And how would you say that, like, if you looked at every part of your life, you looked at your career, which is a driving force, your family, your children, your friends, relationships, everything that you would actually want to share, how would you say it changed?
Yeah. I think there's a richness, to be honest. Like, I think it invited so many more opportunities when I abandoned the person who I thought I had to be. I always joke that the more I share my authentic story, the more people lean in. The more I just put on the fact that everything's wrapped up in this bow, the more that people lean away. It's like we crave human centric conversation.
I
And
agree.
because of, I think this is something that we, whether it's in a really good movie or in a good book, no good book, I'll tell my kids, says everything was great, then everything was even more great, and then it ends by saying everything was really great. Like, that's not a good story. It's not a good movie. It's not a good TV show, right?
It doesn't have substance.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
that's not life either, right? So,
Yeah.
but the best part about all of this is being able to be open with my eldest son. He just turned 10, and sometimes I worry that, when he flips through the book, or sometimes they'll just be messing around on the bed. They're not here now, they're downstairs. But when I'm talking, and I very often will say that the reason I decided to get help was after the birth of my first child, which obviously he knows is him. And sometimes it kind of caught me off guard to go, maybe he'll think that he's the reason for my breakdown
Hmm.
without knowing the whole context. It's very easy for him to draw those parallels and go, oh,
Sure.
it's me that caused that. So just the other day, I sat him down and I said, I want you to know that it was nothing to do with you being born. It was kind of just the perfect storm that mommy had this ever since she was little. And I kind of gave him a bit of the backstory. And I even went so far as telling him of the words OCD and telling him about some of the context of the intrusive thoughts. So, like, what that felt like about not wanting to think those thoughts, and about the medication. And he just said, okay. Like, there's, with the children, there's no judgment. There's no feeling of, oh, that's weird or that's strange. But what I really want to model is to be able to say this, just like I would say, look, mommy has, hurt her knee, or
Yeah.
mommy has a broken bone. Like, why do we hold one with so much shame and not the other?
Yeah.
So part of this is to change the tide and change the dialogue about how we approach these things. Because I don't know what barriers or what things he's going to face in his life, but I never want him not to tell me, because I think he has to be stronger, smarter, better. Right?
Yeah.
That's never
Or not to tell himself, right? Like
exactly,
hide it from himself first,
exactly,
which is what we
exactly.
try to do all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that modeling to me and saying that mommy's speaking to just a coach for her brain, right? And, I would never say I'm not going to see a personal trainer and hide that from my kids. Why do we say that about counseling, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that gives me hope. And it gives me hope about what that generation will see mental, physical, emotional health as in, and they can see that this is a work in progress, right? And it takes mindfulness, right?
Yeah, I just love the vulnerability part of it because it is real. It's that's just who we are, and that's who we're supposed to be. We are not supposed to be anything else. And I think that that's really like we are so. At the end of the day, we are so vulnerable. Even if you want to accept it or not, even if you live like it or not, we are.
Exactly. It's so true. Yeah, whether you like it or not, too. And I
Yeah.
think it goes back on what is on the other side. What is on the other side of self-acknowledgement, of not abandoning yourself, of feeling like you can be vulnerable. Like, on the other side of that is so much greatness and peace and hope and all those things,
And
right? So,
grace.
yeah,
And grace.
with grace. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it takes practice, and it's not going to be easy. And none of this has been, but we always talk about in this world about, oh, I was triggered with this or triggered with that. But sometimes I want to flip that, girl. What were your glimmers? What was in your life, those glimmers that showed you that this is what is possible? So
Mhm.
yeah, it's fine to look out for the triggers and things that trigger you, but we don't pay the same attention to what is causing you that feeling of this could be on the other side of that, those glimmers in your life.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I actually wanted to do this podcast because I spent so much time there. I spent so much time on the triggers, on the trauma, on figuring out. I put all my energy and all my attention there, and I didn't put any energy into what I really wanted. And you said is the spark,
Yeah.
the glimmer, the positive.
Yeah.
And you know what, for a while it was working because I really got to know myself, and
Yes.
having self-knowledge and self-awareness. I think that it's one of the biggest powers that we
Yes.
can have, knowing ourselves, because then we know how to cope and we know what's happening, right? So we can start building different practices to kind of face challenges or learn about how to enjoy life, as you said, not just the negative but also the positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people actually get stuck in the past.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I think I once heard this great, it's a rudimentary definition, but if you think about depression as being stuck in the past and anxiety being stuck in the future, right? And it's like
Mhm,
this tug of war between the two. And if you list off, there's 3,400 different emotions. And if you look at an emotion list, you'll find that the emotions that bring you the most peace are the emotions that are associated with the present moment,
mhm,
right? Actually feeling calm or feeling a sense of delight or awe. You don't usually feel awe in the past. You don't feel awe in the future. You feel awe in the present. But rumination and frustration, anxiety, and
yeah.
disgust, all those are all kind of past present emotions. So I sometimes looking at it that way has really helped me go like, what is that lexicon of emotions that I can feel presently right now? Because so often it's just like a magnet, like we get pulled to either end of those spectrums.
So do you think that that's what helps you when you want to anchor yourself, when you feel like you're going in a dip, and you have your ups and downs? Do you feel like coming back to the present moment? It what keep you, I guess, maybe keeps you grounded?
Yeah, but if anybody tells me about like, just be present or just breathe or just be mindful. I think there is such a thing as like, we've heard all of that so much, so it
Mm-hmm.
starts to lose its essence.
Yeah.
So with the three boys, I'll be honest that it is really, really hard to have three young boys at home. They are fighting constantly. There's a lot of loud noises and things like that. So I find it challenging on the after school time period. So I came up with this thing that I call joy stretching. And it has worked so well for me. I just have to remind myself to do it because I often forget. And what all that means is that those moments that are really beautiful with the kids are actually few and far between. Like they're tiny moments, right? So I always think about what if I could take that moment of when I'm like sniffing their hair after the shower, or I'm cuddling them in bed, or I'm reading a story, even if it's like a couple of minutes long. How in my mind do I take that like a piece of gum and stretch
Mm-hmm.
it, stretch it, stretch it, stretch it?
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, the many moments that they are fighting or arguing and stuff, those are those are a lot. But conversely, I need to learn how to shrink those
Mm-hmm.
moments. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like shrinking the things that I don't want and stretching the things that I do want. And the way that I stretch it is to utilize the five senses. So just like sniffing their hair after the shower,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
sensation of the blanket, but picturing like silly putty or gum or any of those
Mm-hmm.
things stretching out has, because the only way that you can get something logged into your short term memory is to consciously and
Mm-hmm.
actively pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So now I can actually have these joy stretching moments. So when I remember doing that, otherwise the whole afternoon passes me by and I don't remember anything because
I
I'm
love
too in
it.
reactive mode.
Yeah.
So that has been very personally, very, very helpful for me. And I share that with anybody who might find it helpful. Because if it does, then that's great because it's one
Yeah.
more tool in your tool belt, right?
Yeah, no, I love it. I actually do something very similar. So I
Okay.
I consciously turn my head to the
Oh,
right. So like
okay.
if I have my eyes and my thoughts, and
Yeah.
those are my eyes, my inner eyes are on something that's I just start repeating, or I get frustrated or
Yes.
angry or something, then I'm like, okay, wait, I stopped the thought and I literally turned my eyes inside my head
Yeah.
and I start looking to the right. And it's always to the right. It's
Okay.
always the same direction. And then
Yes.
I'm like, okay, but what's good? And then I was like, okay. And then as you said, you're stretching, I'm start growing the experiences because I'm like, okay, but that's good. And that's good too. And that's good too. And
Mhm.
that's good too. And eventually I just keep focusing on the things that are good and they're
Uh,
positive. And
yes.
because then I just push those negative thoughts out of my mind because they don't have enough space. Like the mind
Yes.
can only go to one direction, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
So
Oh,
it's
I
very
love that.
similar. It's very
Very similar.
similar to what you're doing, but you were talking about the stretching because I do a meditation, which is pretty similar too. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I love it.
Right? Exactly. Some words just, I think that is the beauty of speaking and writing is the use of language, right? I kind of worry now with like AI and stuff like how that's going to get taken over, but I love speaking for this reason to go like how does one word like the word stretch, what does that evoke in you, right? Because we all
Mhm.
have something innate in us that goes, okay, what does that mean to us? And for me, the first thing was like what my kids do with their gum, and they'll just like stretch it out. So
Love it.
why they do that, I don't know. But yeah, it's
It's a
funny.
good
And
game. And then if you put that into that you're just playing the game as you're stretching the positive emotions, it actually becomes
exactly,
even better.
exactly. So true, right? So yeah, and it's funny how I think we devise these things to like a flotation of device, right? To keep us afloat. And maybe in a couple of months I'll have to change and we'll see where it lands us too. But I think there's a certain creativity in trying to think outside the box, right? Because a tool that worked for you for 6 months, you might need to just like find something new and reinvent, right? So but that's by listening to podcasts and reading these types of things, 'cause you don't know what you're going to hear that might go, okay, that's the one I want to try.
Yeah, yeah. I have one more question before we go into the last three questions that I ask everyone, and that's what do you feel the most proud of about your journey?
Mm. You know what? It'd be easy for me to say like the book or the speaking stuff or all that sort of stuff, but it has to go back to the conversation I think I had recently with my son. Like that to me, changing the direction of how we're going to raise our children to think and feel and look at mental health and hopefully model that. Like I'm the most proud of that too. And that was on a good day. I don't know how things are going to be, but I think maybe also as well as being honest, even with people like you, that it's not a one and done and not everything is not hunky dory and it's not all, that was in the past and feeling like, no, this is an ongoing journey for me. So leaning into that piece that this is ongoing with the side of hope, um, yeah, makes me want to keep talking about it.
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge that listening to your journey
Mm.
and what you've been through and where you are right now. I just feel really honored to have this conversation with you, and I thank you so much for your vulnerability and honesty. I think it's amazing what you have achieved and where you are, and I just and I feel that from my heart, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you. That really does mean a lot too. I really value those words and thank you for even having the platform to put this kind of thing out there because once again, right, it was podcasts can do amazing things for people. I think having that kind of that voice in your ear that when you're running or when you're doing your errands and things like that, you don't know what line is going to go, okay, that really resonates with me. And I even find doing this, just like we had talked about off air as well, that it makes you think of your life in very different ways.
Yeah,
And there's something to be said about that, right?
yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, I share that with you that sometimes my guests tell me after we do the recording that they look at their story differently. But I also, after listening to all of your stories, I start looking at my own story differently. So it's really like every single story I share on the podcast and every single answer and insights that I receive
yes.
as I'm listening, it
Yes.
changes my story as well. So it's a very interesting, and very meaningful experience. So I would like to ask you three more questions
Okay.
before we end, and before actually, I would love you to share a little bit about what you do today. The first one is, what advice would you give to your past self who's struggling, who was still wearing the mask, who was still or is still full of shame, and just don't know what's next
Mhm.
and feels lost?
The first thing I would do is give her a big hug.
Mm,
Sometimes it may not even saying anything and saying that it's going to be okay.
mm-hmm,
Tell her that it's not her fault was the biggest thing.
mm-hmm,
It took me a long time to believe that I hadn't made any of this up. However crazy that sounds, I thought I had caused this to myself.
mm-hmm.
And finally, when I started to remember those memories of when I was 5 and 6 and 7, or whatever the case was, early memories, then that brought a lot of reassurance that I didn't make this up. I didn't ask for this. I didn't do anything wrong. This is just happened,
Yeah.
and it can happen. And I think there was a lot of peace in that because I blamed myself for so long. So, yeah, I think looking back, it would be comfort, it would be hope, and it would be optimism. Like there's something better on the other side of this too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a side question from that because it just came to me and I feel like it's important. Do you think that because of this challenge, your life is better?
It's funny. I talk to my husband about that sometimes. Yes, but I would still just want the rash. Like,
Yeah.
it's so hard sometimes. It is for people who live with the intrusive thoughts or any sort of mental health diagnosis. It can really bum you out sometimes. It's hard.
Mm-hmm,
I'm not saying that
mm-hmm,
it's supposed to be easy, but yeah, I think my life is better for sure. Because I've tried finally to lean into all of this. But on those days where you're really feeling so enveloped in the fear and the anxiety and all the rest of it,
mm-hmm.
um, it would be nice sometimes lightening the load a little bit too.
Yeah, and that's 100% understandable. And also, I love that you're honest about it. That's no, I love it. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
What advice would you share with someone who is going through similar challenges right
Mm.
now?
Tell somebody. It doesn't have to be someone close to you. For the first time I told the person on the podcast, but the first person who in front of me was a colleague that I had worked with a little bit, and we were friends, but like, not close. And it was this amazing moment because we were just got to talking, and I finally told her, I said, yeah, I'm on medication. And I thought she's going to judge me. And, I told her my story. And the first thing she told me, she said, me too. And it
Mm,
wasn't the fact that she was on medication, but she just had a story. She had a story that was also quite similar to mine, actually.
wow.
And I hope the person that you find that you decide to share, and I talk about this in the book. When I say share, it doesn't have to be like open the kimono and like, blah, share everything. Dip your toe in. Like, just dip your toe in and get what that feels like to say something
Mhm,
that's real and authentic to you. And once that feels comfortable, dip your toe in a little bit more too. But there, what you will be most likely pleasantly surprised with is that nothing shatters around you and everything goes on like normal, and you might just end up feeling a little bit lighter.
mhm. And less alone.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So I think those are the key themes in this conversation, because that's what the psychiatrist gave me that day was it's hope through connection.
Mm,
The minute that you feel alone, you feel disenfranchised. You feel
yes.
like you're on an island. But the minute you're connected, even to one person, you think that, okay, I have the capacity to do something about this, whatever that thing is.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just to finish up the podcast, I would love to hear about what you do. You were talking about your book, and I think that see your book. It's Feel Better. It's right
Yes,
behind
yes, yes,
you.
yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go. So
Um,
could you
yeah,
tell us a little bit about what you do, where people can find you?
of course. Yeah. So just on drshahana.com, most of like LinkedIn for sure and Instagram as well. So I'm a physician, obviously. I work in various different practices, but one of my main focuses is working with adolescents between the ages of 12 and 24. So I've been doing that for about a decade or so. And it's very challenging work, but very meaningful work, especially when you work once again alongside a team, right? None of this is you're doing solo, right? So that place is called the Foundry Abbotsford. We see a lot of youth, about 500 per month, and we're the largest in our province of British Columbia.
Wow.
And that the podcast, sharing the story, telling the story, now you all know the origin story of how that all came to be. I met the author that helped coach and mentor me to write the book Feel Better. And that was released just in September of last year. So it's very new, very fresh.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So it's been, and I tell the story and I tell the lessons learned and I weave in stories that are obviously anonymous about patients as well. And it's my healing journey. And I always say the things I wish I had learned in medical school that took me a decade after medical school to go, learn what I learned. And I hope, and this is great, it's adolescents can read this as well. It's not supposed to be academic or scientific. It's very, very practical too. So you can get that on the website, on Amazon. There's a Kindle edition, there's an Audible edition, and the proceeds, I try to put it back to support youth mental health as well.
That's amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And I will have all this information in the podcast description. Is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners? Any last thoughts?
Sometimes I think about our health as being, we all hear this, your health is not a destination and all the things, but I always think about your health being a decision. Your health is one decision you make every single day. Sometimes that decision is the decision you make in the Starbucks lineup. Like what are you going to get to eat that or drink that day too? But what is that one decision? You're going to make 100 of decisions all day long, right? But make one that can move you towards that glimmer, whatever that is for you. So if it's dipping your toe in the water and telling somebody, if it's picking up the phone, if it's reading something, if it's listening to something inspirational, any of those things. But what is the one decision to move you towards glimmer, to move you towards connection, and to move you towards hope, right? And that will look different for everybody. But sometimes it's as simple as that. It's not earth-shattering. It's one decision.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and for all your insight. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you.